this is the beginning of my new show. I'm going to call this Season 1, Episode 1. And a lot of it is just about me trying to make a comeback in the chess world. And, well, my main hope is that somebody out there will be listening and have similar problems to my own. And that people will think and have similar problems to my own. I just caught myself doing something wrong. Anyways, I fixed that. So that's my intention. And one thing I discovered years ago, and this was totally by accident, was I got involved in one of the first ventures to do chess on the internet with chesslecture.com. It was an ancient technology by this point. But what it did was, I did like a video a week, and it forced me to express in words the things that I was studying. And at that point, I was trying to become a GM. And the ritual of having to express something mildly intelligent for an audience, I think, helped me become a better player just by forcing myself to articulate the thoughts that I had going on. And that coincided with my belief that I still very much have, that when you're the most important thing to improve is going over your own games with a notebook, something like that. I should show it like that. And writing down what was going on in the games in addition to your analysis of what was happening. So that's why I thought I'm forcing myself to do this show so that I will have to talk about what I'm doing in my own chess training. So first of all, I want to just start where we should start, that I am suffering a malaise at the moment, a kind of serious decline, as it were, in my chess. And let me just pull up the rating graph here for a second. So this is this cool thing you can look up with your FIDE rating. And, what you can see at the beginning is, those are in the early 2000s when I was pushing to become a GM, where there's all this movement and I'm playing a lot more. And then after I became a GM, it was 2008, 2007, there was a lot less pressure for me. It was a lot less inspiration to play, though I did move to the GM house in the Bay Area. And then those long dots that you see, 2011 through on, that was when I was writing my chess novel, Lisa, which I encourage you to read. And I forced myself not to play for a while. But it was also because I was, facing lack of motivation, because there was no obvious goal of, what to achieve. And, then it gets worse, and I played a little bit, did fine. Well, this whole time I'm hovering above 2,500. But then, oh man, you have kids around. I had kids in 2016, moved out to Baltimore, and it's just been a downhill slide, which is not only kids. They're definitely a fault, but also I think you just get older, and it's harder and harder to play. So let me come back to the basic. So if I was a professional Twitcher, I would have the video on those things as well, and maybe I'll get better with that kind of thing if people like this show and I continue to do it. But anyways, so I wanted to say this is very much like there's no real need for me to be over 2,500 other than a feeling of self-respect and a feeling of wanting to play at a higher level. And then looking forward, there's this cool opportunity now for us old guys that once you hit 50, which I'll be in a couple years, then I can start playing in like senior events. And there's cool events happening in St. Louis with the senior championship, U.S. senior championship. And then it would be really cool to be part of the U.S. senior team. And for that, I have to definitely be at least over 2,500. So that's the challenge ahead of me, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about maybe first what my let me just say what the immediate problems have been recently. Um, the biggest one has been I'm playing in these open tournaments, and I'm playing kids who are like 2200 USCF, so like 2100 FIDE. And, the problem is that they're hard to beat consistently. And the magical thing about the ELO system is if you want to be 2500 on the FIDE rating, you have to beat the 2100s 9 out of 10. And that's just a brutal statistic, to get 9 out of 10. And these are oftentimes kids who maybe they don't have that much positional understanding or experience, but they can maybe do a puzzle rush of, I don't know, 50 or something. That's not uncommon with these kids. And so they're dangerous. And to sort of score 9 out of 10, it's just daunting to think about, to score 9 out of 10 against those kids. So that's my one challenge. I have not been performing well against those kids. And you saw it in that graph. I'll go back to it for a second, that I'm just falling like a stone. I'm falling. And I just played this last weekend, and I'm certain to have lost at least another 10 points. So this is a real challenge for me to get back to 2,500. And, before 2,500, when you hold it for a while, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But now when you lose it, and I've seen other GMs lose it, it's actually, I'm realizing, wow, that's very tough to claw my way back up to there. And when you look at the rating graph too, I'll say from experience, and I was in my 30s when I was trying to become a GM, and I had to work. That was years and years I had to work to make it up to 2,500. It was very difficult. So I want to talk a little bit about what I think I need to do to improve. And one of the things I'm hoping to do with this show is maybe other people will have ideas of what I should do, or we can have some kind of discussion. I can answer questions or talk about whatever people's suggestions are too, because I do have a certain way of looking at chess improvement, and I feel like the major problem is that I don't follow my own advice. I find it difficult to follow my own advice. And I'll talk about that more in a moment, but maybe other people will just say, no, you're going about this all wrong. So let me talk about what I think I need to do to improve. So, for example, this last tournament I played in Philly, I didn't even finish all the games from the tournament before that. So I had 2 games prior. And it takes me a while. I spend oftentimes, 10 to 15 pages in my book of going over, games and making notes. And this one, I hadn't even finished it. So I had more than like 2.5 games I have to do. And so the biggest problem for me is following my own advice of actually doing the analysis of my games, primarily because it's psychologically so hard to even start. It's so hard for me to get into the analysis of my own games because it's such a painful memory oftentimes. Though once I'm there, it's kind of like, sometimes you start a run and you feel like, oh, no way, do I want to even do this? But then after, you always feel relatively good about it within the first 5 to 10 minutes. And that's kind of how it is with the analysis of my own games. And really, because it's so hard, that's why I started this show, this once a month on chess.com with the member game analysis, where people submit their games. And I do that once a month. That'll be next Wednesday at this time, but it'll be 3 hours, 4 to 7. If you want to submit a game, you can. And there's a thread on chess.com, so you just search me in my last name in, the blogs, the forums, then you will find that, and you can submit a game to that. Anyways, I started that show because I know from years and years of experience, now more than a decade, that how hard it is to do your own games. So I'm trying to help other people do it, and obviously, if I'm going to preach that, I have to also do it myself. I also just simply know that that's the way for me to improve. So going back into this list of things, There's a book that I've got, this Kalinishenko book, and let me show you this book. I do not recommend you even trying to get this book. I don't recommend anyone getting it. It's this Russian book I got in Moscow. I really like it a lot, but I don't recommend you try to get it because it is simply too hard to get. It is too hard. It costs like $400 and some on Amazon if you go on there right now. And that's a lot of things from the Soviet Union. It's very hard to get them. I shouldn't say so. It wasn't Soviet Union. I got it like 2003 or something. But that book very much helped me become a GM. It's basically endgame positions, and I've done it several times. And so there's this thing floating out there called the woodpecker method, where people are like my friend Vishnu are really talking about doing the same thing over and over. And I don't have a full read exactly on what they're doing, but I feel like I'm doing a similar thing when I repeat this book. There's thousands of problems in endgames, a lot of endgame studies, and so I don't really remember the problems exactly, and that's a problem with my own intelligence that I don't remember them clearly. But anyways, that's what I'm doing there. Triple H writes, what kind of notes do you write down when you analyze a game? Well, I'll show you a little bit. I'll get a slightly longer game. I write down the moves. I don't know how to clear this. Anyway, I'll write down the moves, and I write down the time. I always mark the time on my score sheet. And I'll I'll try to have some words about what's going on. A lot of times, though, I'm just going through the variations and trying to assess what the variations and what the possibilities were. And a lot of it is discovering the missed chances without the computer. Later, I'll look at it with the computer, and that's part of the reason it's such a lot of work to do, because the computer is going to tell you something different. But it's the human knowledge that is so important, I think, in going over your games, because you have to articulate in words what your mistakes were. Whereas with the computer, it'll tell you some interesting things, but it won't say it in words, and nothing, and it's going to tell you variations that probably you shouldn't even have in your mind. That's my sense. So Z Nation says, by repeating the same puzzle set multiple times, idea is just to burn certain patterns into your head for good. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I'm doing with this Kalinishenko book. Let's go back to this list of improvement. Right, fitness. Definitely a little bit out of shape at the moment. And I got so pumped up to do this training program. I was really like, I'm going to write it all down. And so here's my fitness thing. It's a little bit embarrassing, but I could say it has nothing to do with chess, but it honestly, there's a lot to do with chess, where I'm just trying to keep it solid here. 189, so that's just like my top level of a healthy BMI for a guy my size. 630 mile, I did that last November when I was in St. Louis. I nearly died, but I did do it. I've signed up to do this 50K trail run in March. That's going to kill me. And 50 push-ups is very difficult, but I also did that when I was in St. Louis back in November or whenever it was. So those are like baseline stats. I feel that hold that just means that I have a certain level of fitness. And I think especially for the old guys, for anybody, but for the old guys, it's really tough. And one of the things that I can say about this tournament I just played in is these American Swisses are just brutal events where you're playing 2 rounds a day. It's totally uncivilized. There's it's like a sick ward in there, especially on the final day. You got kids coughing all around you. They're not covering their mouths. You're shaking their hands. You got to go run to the bathroom after you shake their heads to clean off the slime. And so obviously you're going to become sick and you're going to become tired, but if you have a certain level of fitness coming into it, the hope is anyway that that'll take you through it. And I'll say, One of the tournaments I really blew last year was this 9-round event called the Cherry Blossom Open, and I had a couple games that went the distance, and I was just totally exhausted. And even if you're in shape, they're just totally going to be wrecked if you get a couple games that are really long. So that's why I think fitness is one of the key things. Now, another thing, actually I could have written it down on that list, is I need to be playing tournaments more regularly. Hopefully like once a month or maybe a month and a half. And at the same time, I need time between the tournaments to go over the games, right? So for kicks here, I did a list of tournaments. This is my tournament schedule coming up. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get all this happening, but it's a pretty solid schedule. Next month, this 5-rounder in DC. 5 rounds is a good event for me, honestly, especially if it's 2 rounds a day. I can't do much more than 5. March, I got this really cool. I'm going to go back to St. Louis and do the GM in residence thing. That's always fun. And I just discovered today that at the same time, there's going to be a big tournament, another 5-rounder there. I have to ask the powers that be in St. Louis if they're going to let me play that thing. But I'm hoping that I can use powers of persuasion to say that they should let me play that event. Maybe they'll force me to take a bye at certain points. I have no idea. At the Colonial Open thing, maybe. I'm definitely signed up for Denver. They have me going out there. That's going to be a fun event. And I got this Banff Open thing, which I agreed to. And then I didn't realize that right after that, there's going to be a big Norm event, which I assume is a 9-rounder. So that will be like just a test of endurance if I, do 2 tournaments back to back. I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know my wife's going to let me go. And that's the other thing, right? All these events, most of them are weekend things, but, I got to help out at home, and it's not always so easy. So that's my situation there. And let's go back to this over here to the board. And I thought what I would do is show a moment that I had in this last tournament. Now, I haven't gone over the games fully, but and I will still do, but I thought it would be useful to just show a couple moments that I had in these games. And here we go. And so in this first one, it's like round 3. I'd won the first 2, and they were against, what are they against? They're against like 2,300 kids, 15, 16 years old. And this one was no exception to that. And it started like this. Vishnu encouraged me just by watching his games. I was like, I need to play the Nimzo. But I'm a boring kind of player. And I chose this system mostly because as black, I've had some grief against this myself. So how does it go? The kid played D5. I played Knight E2. He played C6, which is a little bit weird. And I had never even seen that move. And one thing about these kids is, there's first, the openings they play are often just kind of weird anyway. And that goes to the case for like 2200s in general. So, I know a lot of people out there are focusing on their openings. And so right here, I feel like both of us are kind of out of regular business. Maybe I feel like I might know the structure or something like that, but we really are outside of the main realms of theory or whatever you want to call it right away. And the other thing I want to say that's really dangerous about these 2200 kids is like they, right before the round, can look up your openings, but they, for the most part, have few or no games online, right? So they have this huge advantage practically, and You imagine having to win 9 out of 10 games. If they just prep well for you, maybe they can get a winning position or simply a draw, and then you're that whole 9 out of 10 thing is totally wrecked. Andrei, look, are you fluent in Russian? Good question. No, I'm not. And the book, like a lot of problem books, is not really, you don't need to know Russian. So if you look at this thing, it's positions, and I have taught myself to kind of read it, but I don't have the pronunciation, because they got all these weird, here, I'll show you some case endings and stuff here. So that one says like Padya Protev Padya, which just means rook against rook. And the other one says Padya I Pieshka Protev Padya. But I'm not saying the endings right, so don't quote me on that, or the endings, because I know the endings are totally different depending on the case. But anyways, I know enough to read that. But did I know? Did I need to know to read that? No, I didn't need to know how to read that. Vishnu writes, you got me playing 4F3. Would you ever play it yourself? No, I am not an arsonist, Vishnu. You are the arsonist. You are the one who wants the crazy positions. And honestly, especially against these kids, I just want to keep it really dull. I don't want any drama. Yeah. So, anyway, C6. What did I do? I castled. The guy plays knight d7. And, well, so I played the Catalan for years, g3, bishop g2, and this setup is often played against the Catalan. The benefit of playing this triangle setup against the Catalan, right, is that you're blunting the bishop. And in this case, you're not really blunting the bishop. But, what he's got is like a Slav, where a lot of times in the Slav, your bishop will be on d6. And of course, that's a tempo that he kind of owes me. But by the same token, you could argue that my knight on e2 is a little funny. Now, Vishnu, one thing about this setup that actually has a lot to do with the opening repertoire that I thought that would work well for you, and that actually, in talking to you, I was like, I should do that myself. I've had this discussion with other students too, is in this position, if they play d5, well, I'm going to take it, and watch what happens here. Here, now I get to play the Carlsbad structure, and what will often happen in this bishop d3, knight e2 system is that we are going to get a Carlsbad structure, and the point is that, like here, we get to use f3. And why? So the f3 will dominate the knight on f6, and sometimes we'll play for an attack with e4. And so what I realized here in these positions is it's the same thing, except our bishop is on c1. And you could say, that's a big deal, Jesse, the bishop's on c1, and it's kind of true. But an interesting thing about those other positions is that on g5, the bishop often has to worry about getting traded off, and in general, white wants to keep as many pieces on the board. So anyways, knight d7. I think an interesting position, actually, talking about the Carlsbad, would have been to take here, because if he takes back, the knight is misplaced on d7. He takes back the c pawn, and then I can play bishop d2, rook c1, and have a small advantage because I'm threatening knight b5. And ed would lead precisely to this Carlsbad structure where I could play like, I could play f3 now, or I can wait on it, but something like bishop d2, queen c2, f3, and then he has to worry about the e4s of the world. And that's pretty good, actually. So in hindsight, maybe CD would have been stronger than what I did, which is I played here. All right, the kid took, and I played queen, and then played e5, and then played queen c2. All right, I'm going to take a pause here. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a pause, but I'll have you guys just think about the decision I had to make here. So he took. Flora says it's a big problem when the bishop is inside the pawn chain in Carlsbad structures. There is a Magnus game where he quickly trades it off. You know, that's Magnus is actually the guy who has been doing it with the bishop d2 in a lot of positions. So that is an interesting feature. You do have to be clever about the bishop being locked behind the pawn chain. But as a French player, I've learned that it's totally fine to have it behind the pawn chain. You know, you might oftentimes want it outside the pawn chain, especially for an aggressive maniac like yourself, Vishnu. But you know, for us calm guys, it's okay. So if you go to a Carlsbad structure here, would you be looking to trade off that dark square bishop soon? Maybe, but it's really a question for whom. I kind of want to trade it for this guy. Now, with he plays ED, I of course have a choice here, and we're no longer going to be in a Carlsbad structure. I missed my chance really with 8 CD if I wanted that. But at the same time, I'm not upset about this position. I still like the white position a lot. Z-Nation says, I don't want to take on an IQP here when our bishop has already spent a tempo on bishop d2 and our knight on e2 instead of f3. Well, Z-Nation, that was kind of a similar thought that I had. Now, one pedantic reason for taking on ED is just so that the knight is dominated. And it would have been totally possible for me to play ED. And actually, I'll show you a similar position here. If you imagine this kind of thing that you often can get, knight d2, c5. How am I going to get this right? Knight f3, knight c6, takes, bishop b5, takes, castles, knight e7. We have a mirror image position. In fact, white often plays c3 right now. A mirror image position of this one, except really the tempos are a little different. You know, this is controversial and this is controversial, but basically the same thing. But, well, I shouldn't say bishop b4 is controversial, because in that French line, a cool move actually is c3, castles, bishop d3 exclam, and you are preventing bishop g4 because of bishop h7. So in any case, one of the reasons I didn't do this was I thought, oh, he plays bishop d6, and where does this guy even go? So yeah, I thought, anyways, I just thought it was simpler too to take with the knight. And just from a dogmatic point of view, I told myself that I have better development, and you know, this bishop probably owes me time, this bishop owes me time. So went knight e5, bishop e2, rook e8, rook ad1. And so, to kind of set the stage for the incredible blunder that I'm going to do here, what happens is I'm playing these 2200 kids, and they often kind of have an arrogant look to them, you know, like they're going to, as if they were a thug on the street and they were just going to like take me out, right? So it feels already kind of like, oh God. And, you know, I feel like young boys especially are just going to be like that. So I don't place any blame, and I probably was like that myself. But in any case, just psychologically it's taxing, when you, especially if you're playing like many of them round after round, and you just know that you're going to play more of them as it comes on, you know, as the tournament comes on. Anyway, so in this position, I felt like I had a pleasant advantage. And like I said, I haven't gone over this in depth, but I will in my notes when I do it. And like I said, I think that's the biggest thing that I have to do before the next tournament, is I got to go over all the games in a really diligent way. So anyways, right, you know, I'm up in development, and we both have some awkward pieces. This guy, both of his bishops don't really know what's going on. Though I definitely call the bishop on b4 as better bishop. And the reason he doesn't know what's going on is he definitely doesn't want to exchange with either of those pieces, right? Okay. So the guy plays knight g6. And I'm not sure what black should do, but I was pretty certain that that wasn't the right move. Because he's signaling that he wants to attack me on the king side, and he's down in time. So I don't think he has enough time to attack me. And also, like, I have more pawns in front of my king, right? So the king side really, it's hard to believe that the king side should be a source of grief for me. That's one of the really weird ways in which I blunder this game. So it was already the thought process of him having a bad plan, which is true, but then it encourages me to arrogance and disrespect later. So I think my next move is good. I said these two pieces are bad, so let's move them out. Well, the kid obliges, and I take on f6, and I play rook g2. And I felt like this was great. Now my queen's got some extra squares here. The rooks are ready to double to win the d-file. This bishop still doesn't know what to do. And, not a winning position, but I thought somewhere between, just a nice, pleasant advantage. Exactly what I want against a kid like this. Okay, so the kid plays knight h4. And I kind of saw this coming, and I rightly just was like, no, this is not a real thing. And I calmly doubled rook fd1. Okay, so then the kid plays queen g5, and I was like, no, you're not doing anything. Play g3. And really, right, he's just he's got a bad position. It's not losing yet. He plays bishop h3. Okay, so I had seen this coming like a mile away, and I played, I think this is the right move, I played f4. And I think objectively what the kid has to do is play queen g6 and just be in a worse endgame after, say, takes, knight takes, and king f2. It's in fact, I think, a really bad endgame because I will own the d-file. This knight is poor, and I'm threatening to trap the bishop at some point with g4 and king g3. So I'd say I'd call this a clear advantage. Okay, so instead, the kid quickly plays queen e7. And I was like, oh my God. So I had looked at this, and let me just say that not only did I do some just initial calculations, but it just was unbelievable to me that, and I think and that was true, that this should work out, because he's going to really have just a queen, rook, and a bishop on the attack against all my stuff, which is relatively like organized. So I said, okay, thank you for the piece. Queen e3, king h1. I'm threatening like stuff like queen d3 to just force the trade. So he plays here, and this is the occasion of my terrible, terrible blunder. So I knew I was winning this thing here. And, my crime here was that the kid was moving so fast and arrogant, and I was just like, okay, the game's over, and I was thinking, like, I'm just going to go back to the hotel room and sleep a little bit before the next round. And I played this next move with, like, maybe under a minute, and I had, like, an hour left, right? And so it's like, at this moment, to finish off this 2200, maybe it was 2300, but to finish him off, I really just have to spend some time because the position's obviously winning for me, and I just have to be a little bit careful. Yeah. Now, some people might be watching this on a replay, and they can pause the thing and then ask themselves what white should do here. I played the horrific blunder, bishop f1, and right, I wasn't respecting the kid enough to be like, maybe he's got something, right? If I'm playing somebody, first of all, it's just a crime for me to think that way anyways, but, it's like these kids, when they're playing really fast and superficial moves, you just feel like you have, or I felt like I had the entitlement to be like, no, you can't play like this, go away from my board. I needed to be just a little careful here. If I just thought for half a second, I would have found rook g1, and I would have really found what the problem. First of all, I would have found what the problem with bishop f1 is. That's the most important thing. And then, because the position is so strong for white, I would have found that rook g1 probably wins. But then I would have thought for just even a minute more and been like, no, bro, all I have to do is take this thing and bishop d3, and it's completely over. Game over. If king f8, it's just even worse. It just goes like this. And I'm touching g2, so he doesn't have a threat. Imagine rook g8, and I hit him again with this tactic. It never goes away. Oh, moment of incaution. And one of the things, for my own chess, and I think this for everybody, but like there's a level of care and accuracy that people need to inculcate into themselves. And I really hope that doing the studies, the endgame studies especially, where you can miss something and just be wrong, will hopefully give me a spirit of care and diligence with these kinds of positions. I've seen it in other players, especially like my friend, I call him Big Mick, Victor Mikulewski. And he is very careful in positions like this. I've seen it in positions I felt like, dude, you're just totally winning, pack it up and go home. And he will spend quite a bit of time just double checking that he hasn't totally blown it. Yeah, Vishnu found it. Bishop f1, and I missed bishop g2, and then I'm losing. I lose. Bishop takes is forced. Rook e1. If bishop f1, he just takes the thing. Rook takes. And then I lose the game. Unbelievable. This is so painful. And in fact, the painfulness of this game is one of the reasons I'm just like, I got to get my chess back together. I got to pull it back together. This is too terrible. Yeah. All right, well, maybe I'll just show you a couple other things. So anyway, so I lost that third round, really painful. And so, the bummer is, okay, so I took a bye in the first round because it's so hard to go up to Philly and yada yada. And what happens then is that now, after not winning the third round, I don't get to play I don't get to play a title player. Right now I'm stuck playing more 2200s. And still, beating the 2200s is not easy. I still won some, but like, for example, I'll show you a game I had. This time I was black. Let's see here. Wait a second. So, oh dear, I hope I didn't blow this here. Wait a second, let's cut that out. Right, this time I was black, so I'll flip this board here. And, I faced another 2200. And what do we get? We got this position that's the bane of a lot of chess players as black. Is, now it's just really kind of hard to win this business. Now, that said, we kind of got what I was hoping for, which was I wanted an endgame. Uh-oh, I might be freezing up here. Uh-oh. Network error. Uh-oh, site can't be reached and all that. Well, let's see if we can get ourselves back. Maybe we can. All right. I don't know if you guys lost me. I lost myself. In any case, hopefully I'm back here. I had to reload everything. I think it was Twitch. I don't think it was me. Anyways, we got this position. Queen takes d2. What did I do? We castled. Right, and we got this position. This, in some ways, it's like this is what I want. I want to play an endgame against a kid. But you can see it's like it's kind of painfully hard to actually win this position. You know, and the way the game played out, I definitely got a very nice position. But was I ever winning? Probably not. I think it went like this. Rook here, knight f3, king f8, knight e5, bishop here, bishop e2, rook c8, c4, king e7. So, you know, we get this endgame, and I feel like I am a little bit better, right? I think so, because my king is playing and his pieces aren't. At the same time, did he do anything dramatically wrong? Not really. His next move, I think, is a mistake, though. And we go b3. And so my knight's penetrated, and I'm now getting ready to play f6. Right? So look, we get this mess. It goes like this. Here's a big decision. I thought for like 30 minutes here, right? Takes. Thank you, Andrea Local. Sometimes it goes away, and I'm not a Twitch genius here. There was many things I could do, but I just want to quickly show. Wait, I blew this here. Yeah, rook c7. The guy has to play rook d3. And yeah, really exciting position where I saw this in advance. I saw this when I played rook takes d1, and I figured I was either clearly better or winning, one of the two. And it's still really tough though. Bishop g6, rook d1. I'm showing you this mostly because I want you guys, not rook d1, I want you guys just to appreciate my pain here of how hard it is to beat these guys 9 out of 10. Rook d2. What did I do? Knight c1. I thought bishop d1 was the critical move. He played rook b2. I said, let's bring the king in. He said here. I said, I don't want you to play b4, so I'm going to play here. 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 Check to the miserable king. So I thought I played this phase of the game. I was happy with this, but I'm already like in a touch of time trouble. And the next couple moves are definitely going to be critical. He does this. Well, I probably can do more than one thing. He's obviously being tricky. I can't take because of this business. Surely not knight a2, surely knight takes e2. Well, let's see. Oh, where am I? I gotta find it here. I gotta go back. Where am I? Rook d1, rook c7, rook d3. Oh, knight e2 was interesting. I did look, but then king f1, and then what? What do I do then? I looked for a long time at knight f4, and then there's both rook d4 and rook f3, and I couldn't find anything clear. Yeah, I couldn't find anything clear. Right, knight f4, and then rook f3 or rook d4, and I didn't see anything special. And I am down a pawn. So, I looked and made, and you know, I will look at this. I will say, this decision, I was fine on the clock until this decision. Bishop takes b7, a very bold move, because I have so many different moves here. I could have also have taken, for example, all kinds of things, and anyways, the position I got, you know, here, I was definitely happy with this. Bishop d5, well, I said, okay, I'll go back. He goes here. Now, maybe I should play knight c5. I played knight c1. And the kid plays a great move here. This is actually like a star move. My king, basically I'm playing with an extra piece, right? And if he has any compensation, it's that he's got this connected pass pawn business, and I'm temporarily out with my bishop. So, by the way, you know, in this position, maybe the star move would have been for me to play. Well, if I play bishop g6, he can just go back to bishop d5. So anyways, yeah, it was a hard decision. I have knight c1. And now he finds a star move. Like I said, he has to get counterplay. And he plays c5. And here I've got less than 5 minutes on the clock. And that was a really good decision on his part. So you can see, like, he might be only 22 something, but the kid's kicking. And he's basically threatening to play c6 and rook b7. So you're right, it's getting hot here. I played king d4. Yeah, it's getting spicy. And how did this go? King d4. The kid plays calmly. How does it? Let me make sure I get this right. Right, bishop f3. Good move again. And now if I play rook c5, I have to contend with rook b7 with counterplay. That's another one of the drawbacks of the bishop on f7. So I found what I thought was a good move, and I played a6. And now the kid again plays well. I think he found this variation where he goes knight c2 check, king c3, rook b7, takes, king takes c2, c6. I gotta play e5. He's gotta play c7. I've gotta play bishop e6. He takes my pawn. I take his pawn. He makes a queen. I take it. Knight d4. You know, what a mess. And am I winning this? Well, I don't know. In the game, I felt like I had what I'd call a clear advantage. And, you know, I played this until move 120. Until he claimed the 15 move rule on me. That's how hard I was trying. And it's positions like this, though, that I feel like, especially with the boring style I have, that I have to play particularly well. And the point here actually is, in hindsight, white needs to really make sure I don't get g5 in quickly. And so h4 right away, I think, would have definitely been his best move. He played g3. I brought the king in. Mistake. I need to play g5 immediately so that when he plays h4, I can split the pawns. So I played king d2, king g2. And this is my last chance to play g5. After f5, the kid played h4. I still have practical chances, but now I think it's a draw. But I'm going to analyze this one as well. You know, that's what I mean by analyzing the games. I will analyze this endgame for at least a couple days. You know, and I really feel like that is the source of improvement. Why is g5 so important? Because after h4, I need to achieve g5, both to force through an f4 break myself, and later, like if I have to play this kind of business to get g5 in, he gets to trade off another pawn, and that gets him much closer to achieving a draw. Whereas if we have, say, this position, and at some point he throws an h4, well, now it's going to be a little bit more spicy because I will be able to create a passed pawn at some point, and then he can sack the bishop for the pawn, but then I have another friend remaining. In the game, in fact, you know, I had to play g5. There's no other progress to be made that I found. I'm gonna look at that. But that was the problem. And then he always was able to sack the bishop. And even then, I was going around and around with the knight, and I thought I would get him. But yeah, unable. So I think a game like this, and there was another one I had in the final round where I could have finished in the money and everything. But another game where, again, I'm playing at 2200 and I'm black and I have to create some chances, and it was very difficult. So I feel like, to beat the 2200s, it's like there's margins where you have to really be on top of it. A lot of times, the 2200s will just collapse. And I think, sometimes on a good day, I feel like, oh yeah, it's easy to beat the 2200s. And sometimes it is. Sometimes they really just do, just fall apart. But other times like this, the kid really put, I think, a good game together. All right, everybody. So let me give a couple announcements. I am going to do the member game analysis next Wednesday. So this particular show, episode 2 of season 1 of Jesse's Road Back to 2500, is going to come back on February 5th. And so next Wednesday, 29th, I'll do the member game analysis. And, the main thing for me is I need to practice what I preach in analyzing my own game. So that's going to be number 1 on the list for me to improve. And I'm going to hopefully help other people do the same with the analysis that we do every Wednesday, every final Wednesday for 3 hours. And you can, like I said, submit your game on chess.com. If you just go to the forums and search my name, you'll find that thread. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being part of the show. And subscribe, subscribe or, do something. Retweet my business, and it'll help me do this, because my wife is like, I don't know, buddy. This is just ridiculous what you're doing. And so I have to rationalize my time spent here in some way. All right, till next time. Talk to you then. Bye.